Well guys, how you doing? Welcome to the Newcastle training ground. We've just heard from Eddie Howe this morning ahead of tomorrow's match against Sheffield United, and the big news to come out of his press conference this morning was revelation, confirmation from Eddie Howe that Bruno Guimarães does indeed have a release clause window operating in June. So look, I don't think Eddie wanted to talk about it too much this morning or to go into too much detail about it, but yeah, he did reveal that the club really are in a strong position this summer when it comes to Bruno Guimarães. Essentially, if a club wants to buy him and they want to meet his release clause, which stands at £100 million, then they will have to do so before the end of June. So that is obviously very early in the summer window. It's while the Euros are still going on, it's while Bruno's going to be away playing for Brazil. And it's a time when obviously things are going to be pretty busy for players like Bruno on international duty. We look at transfer windows previous and they really don't start, particularly when there's a summer competition tournament on like the Euros this summer. They don't really kick into action until July. Everything's knocked back a couple of weeks this year because of the international tournaments. And I would suggest it'll be difficult for a club to come in and buy Bruno Guimarães so soon. Now, obviously, if they meet the release clause of £100 million, then it's taken out of Newcastle's hands and the player leaves if he wants to leave. But they're going to have to get their ducks in order pretty quickly. Any club who wants to sign Bruno Guimarães, whether that be Paris Saint-Germain, Arsenal, Manchester City, to name but a few of clubs that are obviously tracking him. I just feel that revelation makes me feel that it's going to be difficult for anyone to take Bruno this summer, because once we then reach the start of July, bearing in mind the likes of the Euros are still ongoing, Copa America as well, once you reach that stage, Newcastle could then essentially name their price for Bruno, or they could just issue a hands-off warning and flatly turn down any offer that is made for the Brazilian midfielder. So look, really good piece of business by Newcastle. Eddie Howe admitted that today. He said, look, it was structured and planned in a way to give us strength and to ensure that it doesn't drag on all summer long. And it means Newcastle, are in a position where they will know by the end of June whether Bruno Guimarães is going to stay or not, because I think any offer that comes in after that, it would be very unlikely that they'll sell their playmaker. They want him for next season, and as Eddie Howe has said this morning, look, he's in a good place, he's mentally very good, he's playing really well, he is the player that we want to build our team around. So look, I think that's good news. Obviously that news did come out firstly last night, but Eddie Howe essentially confirming that this morning. And it would feel to me that everything's pointing towards Bruno Guimarães staying this summer, unless a ridiculous offer comes in June of £100 million that Newcastle are unable to turn down, because it would meet their release clause. But I'm just not sure whether any club would pay that amount of money for Bruno right now. I think, is he worth that in today's market? I'm not too sure, and I just think one of these clubs would probably try and pinch him for less than that, but clearly that isn't going to happen. So good news that today. Also on transfers, Eddie Howe spoke about the summer window and what Newcastle will be looking for. Of course, remember, they brought in young players last summer, the likes of Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento, to try and develop them. Harvey Barnes to a slightly lesser extent. He obviously was proven in the Premier League. And then Sandro Tonali, who I think we can all say is pretty much a world-class player, but obviously Newcastle have been without his services. But what Eddie said this morning was that for this summer's window, they're not in a position to buy elite players. They're not in a position to go out there and buy world-class stars, and what they're going to have to do again is buy young players. I'm just going to move away from here because you can probably hear there's loads of diggers outside and it's a little bit off-putting. I need to get out here soon as well because the players are coming in to train in here, to warm up in here. But sorry, going back to what I was saying, he said, look, what we've done is we've tried to bring in young players, and obviously to differing effects so far. But he said, look, what we've tried to do is bring them in to develop them and make them into world stars. And he says, look, we've done that with a couple already, and I think by that he's alluding to both Bruno and Alexander Isak, and it feels like there's going to be more of the same. He says, look, we're going to have to be creative, we're going to have to do things a little bit differently to some of the clubs around us. So it means that Newcastle aren't going to be signing star names. But look, I think you guys all understand that now anyway. I think there's an acceptance that a Bruno Isak type signing is what Newcastle should be looking at. And look, you know, people had heard of Alex Isak before he signed for Newcastle. Some people had heard of Bruno Guimarães on these shows, not too many. But Newcastle have made him into a sort of world star now, really. You know, everyone knows who he is. Lots of teams are interested in him. And I would arguably say that Alex Isak is one of the best, if not the best, striker in the Premier League at the moment. Yes, Erling Haaland, of course, is up there. Ivan Toney's been great for a couple of years now. But I think Alex Isak, on his day, if he's fit, is probably on these guys' level. So that is what Newcastle are going to have to do in the summer. So I don't think there should be anything too worried about Eddie Howe saying that. But it's just that sort of underlining of where Newcastle are, that because of PSR, FFP, that they're going to have to be creative. They're going to have to bring sort of younger talent in, try to prove them, and then maybe sell them on further down the line to help with their PSR situation. So I think when you read the quotes, or when you hear it first out of his mouth, you kind of think, oh, hang on, this doesn't sound great. But look, it's exactly what Newcastle have been doing. And he said, look, I think there's an understanding from the supporters that is what we've been trying to do, that's what we're going to do moving forward, and that really is our model. So that was the sort of two big talking points today. A little funny thing on Matt Ritchie, where, you know, he said, I only found out about Matt Ritchie last week, learning to drive a heavy goods vehicle, and he said, look, I knew a lot about Matt Ritchie, but I didn't know that, and even that kind of took me by surprise. In terms of injuries, same squad tomorrow for Sheffield United. I've just seen Miguel Almiron just doing a little bit of running in here, so he's pretty close. Eddie says he'll be back in and around the squad for the game next weekend against Burnley away. It sounds like Kieran Trippier's close as well. Nick Pope is out there doing some training drills, some shooting drills, but hasn't joined in full training with the squad yet. And there was good news on Joe Linton, and he could be back before the end of the season. So it feels like the squad is going to be a lot stronger for the last sort of 3-4 games of the season. But again, it just depends what speed these players are up to in terms of strength and power and fitness, because, you know, as you know, it normally takes a bit of time to get them back up to speed. So fairly decent news on that. I would expect Tino Livramento to come back in tomorrow. He said, you know, he's kind of strengthened things over the last couple of days. I think they'll go back to a back four, and I think Livramento will come in. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays both Livramento and Hall at full back tomorrow, with Byrne and Sher at centre half. That would be the team I would pick, and that's what I think will probably happen tomorrow as well. So good news on the Bruno front from this morning. It feels very much as though Newcastle are in a strong position this summer, and in terms of buying players, he says, look, it's going to be a really, really important window for us. We need a director of football in as soon as we can. He said I would have him yesterday, and if I could, because he knows that he's got a lot to get through this summer in terms of transfers, and he obviously wants that extra set of hands to make help make these big decisions. So that's it from me, guys. Leave your comments below on Bruno, and I will speak to you on the next video. Cheers now.